Today I'm going to have a casual chat with Shelley Bata, the owner of Madison Page, which is a local stationery shop here in downtown Calgary. It's a wonderful store, and I've been wanting to have this conversation for a while. And one of the unique things about Madison Page, which we'll get to in the interview here, is the location of the store, which is right downtown in corporate-centered Calgary, not typically where you would think to have a stationery store, and yet it's been working out really well for Shelley and Madison Page. So let me give you a quick tour, and then we'll chat with Shelley. Let's just talk a little bit about the store and how this all came to be in terms of the stationery store that you have here.
Of course. My name is Shelley, and I am the owner of Madison Page, which is a fine writing and stationery store in downtown Calgary. The store itself has been around, since 1989. I have not owned it since 1989. It was originally in Bankers Hall, and then that owner moved it into Fifth Avenue Place, which is where we are now, in 2001. So we've been here for quite a while. This name Madison and Page, because I get asked all the time, is not a person. She did Madison because we are right on Fifth Avenue, and she thought that was a very New York feel. So Madison for Madison Avenue, and Page obviously for paper. So that's where the name came from. All of the fixturing and everything in the store was her original design. She had exquisite taste and just like a really clean and modern sense of styling. And honestly, I've not had to change much. I inherited a wonderful little niche business with a regular clientele and really fun products. And it's been a really wonderful journey.
So the layout of the store hasn't changed all that much since 1989, is what you're saying?
The only thing that I have done to this store when we were closed during COVID, I had the floors redone. We used to have carpet in here. And other than that, and I did add a shelf to add more ink. And other than that, everything is as it was. The original owner of this store was a good friend of my husband. And actually my husband helped open this store when he was in university.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've always loved pens and paper, and I never wrote in normal ink. I always wrote with colored paper, green pens, purple pens, I never handed anything in school on a normal piece of paper or with a normal pen ever. And I think when you're a kid, either you are a stationary person or you're not. And I don't think anyone ever grows out of it. But when I was on mat leave from my old job, and then I needed to find something part-time. And so they were hiring here and I knew them. So I was like, oh, I would love to do that. And then I consider that my university for the pen life, that I really got into fountain pens and ink and became quite obsessive about it. And then that owner needed to sell because she had a family business that she couldn't do both. And so she offered it to us. So we bought the business. Yeah.
Very cool. So gravitating towards kind of your standard Bic pen, I guess, and two fountain pens, where was that draw? How did you find out about fountain pens personally?
When I was a kid, as many kids, I had the old Schaefer calligraphy set with all the different colors of ink and all the different nib sizes. And that was like a playground for me, because if you give me options for ink colors, I'm all over it. And I used to try and do calligraphy, which is not the same as handwriting, but I used to try and I loved it. And then even in school, I used to buy those little Pilot disposable, I think they're called the VTAC fountain pens, those throwaway ones. I used to love those. A little scratchy now, I realize. But at the time, it was like, ooh, fountain pen. So I've known about them since I was young and have kind of always used them. Probably not as much in university and that sort of thing. And then, getting back into it, it was like, ooh, here we are. This is my happy place. So now I almost primarily use fountain pen. I'll flicker into a gel pen once in a while or a roller ball, but fountain pen is my everyday.
That's your go-to.
I have several inked up at all times.
Let's talk about your location, because it's kind of unique for a stationery shop. For those of the folks out in YouTube world, Calgary, very centralized downtown core, and this shop is on the second floor of one of the downtown buildings here. I'm just curious, do you know what the thought process of the original owner was to centralize it here, and all these years later, how that affects business and how that changes things, if it changes things in terms of foot traffic and sales?
So I think anyone who knows anything about Calgary and the downtown, the plus 15 system, which is the second floor, is all connected by bridges because nobody wants to go outside when it's minus 40 in the winter. But it has, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but it's one of the highest walking traffic skews for any kind of retail business in, I don't know if it's all of Canada, but certainly in Alberta. There's so many people because all the office towers are here. Of most of the oil and gas companies and law firms and all of that are all downtown, and all these bridges and walkways are all connected. So when people are out at lunch hour, especially, there's so much traffic through all the buildings for people running their errands, getting their lunch, going to meetings, doing whatever. So I'm sure that was the initial thought, was that this is just such a prime spot, like, to walk by. We're right beside several of the oil and gas firms. We obviously deal with a very corporate clientele because of that. So we don't tend to order as many, let's say, the art supplies and the gel pen side of things. We do a little bit more on the fine writing, definitely more corporate, as much as I would love all the fun, colorful, crazy stickers and gel pens and all that. It's not my real demographic. So there's a few, but we definitely tend to veer on the little more serious conservative side. That being said, I'm also a stickler for paper. I don't sell a notebook that doesn't work with fountain pen. And, so we try and do a little bit of everything. And then aside from the pens and the stationery, we have some like executive gifts and leather goods and that sort of thing. So we do have a very sort of corporate client base, more so than a more art-based place that sells fountain pens, for example.
And we were talking just before the video started here, is that given the fact that Madison Page is surrounded by effectively a lot of different oil and gas clients, corporate clients, most of the sales happen over lunch hours. So that's a pretty fascinating concept, even though you're open between...
We're open 9 to 4 on Monday through Thursday, and then 9 till 3 on Fridays, because Fridays in downtown Calgary historically are always very, very quiet. Plus I am a mom, so I do have a son to pick up at school. But yeah, it's lunch hour is by far the busiest time of the day. I would say 90% of my business is done between the hours of sort of that 12 to 1:30. And it's when people are running their errands, doing their, if you try and walk in the plus 15s or try and get lunch, it's lined up. It's crazy. It's a little bit chaotic out there. So I always recommend coming like earlier, because then you don't get the rush. But yeah, it's good. It's nice to kind of get it out of the way. And then the afternoon is usually relaxing. So the other thing too is to come in around like 2 o'clock or so, and then you can linger and chat more and explore more. Sometimes I'm a one-person show, so sometimes at lunch it's hard for me to spend a lot of time with people if they have lots of questions, depending on how busy it is. But I try.
And that's the other thing I've noticed is every time I've been in the store, it's just been you with a gaggle of people around you trying to get your attention about what they're trying to purchase or whatever they might be interested in. Have you ever thought of expanding your staff? Have you done that in the past before?
We have had staff. Yeah. I used to have somebody that worked with me part-time, which was great. And sometimes we were on the same days, like around Christmas time, she would come in and help cover lunch hours, just so we had a couple of us. Or she would do 1 day a week so that I could get a day off during the week to do all the things like doctor's appointments and all that sort of stuff, or buying, if I had errands to run for the store. Sadly, since COVID, it's not busy enough to really merit another person. So that's a little bit of a tough thing, but I'm also not open on the weekends. So I can't really complain when it comes to retail. I sort of have princess shift hours because I don't work on Saturdays and Sundays. But yeah, I would love to be able to say that I could have somebody else. Oddly, it's a strange business in that I couldn't have somebody where they would come in for a few days a week, because we're definitely not busy enough for that. It's a very steep learning curve. And I know if somebody's watching this, they probably are into pens and into stationery, so they would understand it. But to know the refills alone that go with each and every single one of the pens that we sell, and when someone's coming in at lunch, they might have 5 minutes to come pick up their refill and head back. And you have to know which refill it is. And so that part is really hard. And to have somebody who is willing to do that and then only come in like 1 day a week doesn't really exist. I had the unicorn before, and she started her own business, which is wonderful, and it's in a completely different realm. But I miss her. But yeah, it's I'm fine with it right now. doing it on my own. I'll groom my child to eventually take over when he's not in school.
Family-run business, so yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What do you think makes Madison Page unique, other than the fact that it's got a unique location, unique storefront? What do you think the store offers that's different than most other stationery shops?
So a couple of things. I think that we're tiny. We're a 600 square foot space. So there is something to be said for not being able to carry everything. And I know for some people that might mean I don't have enough selection, but I prefer to think of it as I have a very edited selection. Curated, exactly. Yeah. So I tend to really have to pare down and only pick what I think is really the strongest player in a collection, or maybe the best notebook. If they sell 5 kinds of notebooks, maybe I only carry 2. And I have to really do that. I don't have a storage space anywhere or a warehouse. So the stock I have is the stock. So there is something to be said for doing smaller orders more often, that you can also flip inventory. It's easy for me to do a special order. Like if somebody needs to order a pen in, I don't have to wait 6 months necessarily to get for them, because I do smaller orders more often. So I can always add things in for people. So I'm always happy to do that. The only time I can't do that necessarily is ink, just because it's ink. It's climate dependent, but also I have some inks that I order directly from Korea, let's say. So I can't order from Korea every 2 weeks. Too expensive with the freight. Right. So I tend to bunch it into 2 or 3 orders a year and do a massive bulk order. But I find most people are pretty happy to wait. They know they're not usually in a hurry for things like that. So, and I mean, I think, to be honest with you, I think that I am the owner and I am the face of the business, but I also love the business. Like, I am a pen user and I am a pen lover and I am a paper person. So I think that most of the regular customers know that that's who I am, and they come to me because they trust my advice, or they know I'm going to be very honest with them. I'm going to tell them if I don't think something's good, or if I think it's okay, or if it's wonderful and the best and the latest and the greatest. So I think I've earned the trust of a lot of my customers. And built that loyalty. And my favorite is when I have somebody who says, I think I want to try a fountain pen. I love indoctrinating new people into the habit. I say, welcome to the rabbit hole. I call myself the pen pusher, but I'm in the rabbit hole with them. So I don't feel like I'm not ever doing a hard sell on anybody. I never try to push anybody into something that they're not comfortable. I don't like to upsell people to a more expensive pen.
Right.
I don't think expensive means good. I think it has to suit their lifestyle. I ask a lot of questions. But I find that most of them return because hopefully I found them what they like. And I mean, everyone on this channel would know, once you start using a fountain pen, you really never go back to a normal pen. And then you go down the ink rabbit hole, which is the really fun part. So a good day for me is when I go home with the ink on my fingers, like all of my little cards out of my color wheel that we've been comparing colors and finding the right color. And yeah, those are the best days. So.
Well, and speaking about that, Shelley, I do find it quite refreshing. Anytime I've been in the store, you do take the time to chat with me about what I'm looking for in particular, whether that's an ink choice. And what I really enjoy is the fact that you'll pull out different colors of inks that I think I want and then completely show me something else and pique my interest, which is kind of dangerous in itself. Same with fountain pens. But yeah, I really do appreciate that you've got such a passion for this.
Yeah.
Like that really shows.
Yeah. I'm a big believer. I've worked retail for a very, very long time and not always pens. I believe you can only really sell what you love.
Yeah.
I can sell things that I'm not necessarily a super fan of, but I understand why people love it. Like, I don't ever write with black ink, but I can sell black ink. No problem.
Yeah.
But I do think you have to truly be in the realm of what you're selling to do it well.
Fair enough. You talked a little bit about COVID and the shutdown, and I know you and I were chatting just a bit before the video about how that's really impacted the business. You've got an online store presence as well. I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit about your experience in the store, navigating the lockdowns and coming out of that, and what that's been like.
So lockdown for us was really strange because we locked down in March. In May, the government said, okay, retail can open back up. So, we came back, very limited hours, obviously. And we came back to literally nobody in the downtown core because all of the office towers were still in lockdown. All the plus 15s, which are controlled by the city, were all locked down. So you couldn't get into the building. There was one door for almost every building in downtown Calgary that you could get in and out of that building. They didn't have multiple entrances. So it was, there wasn't a lot of people. We obviously did do some online sales, and luckily, because we were working such limited hours and I had a son who was doing homeschooling, so I didn't have to like go pick him up or anything, I was able to, for the most part, I would just deliver the things to people myself. So I would go and drop them off and, you know, do their online orders, and then I would just go and take them their orders at the end of the day and then go home. Then they tried to bring people back, which was great. And then I want to say that was maybe like September of whatever year that was. And then, so we were like, okay, maybe we'll be back and it'll be great. And then I want to say it was November or December, they sent everybody back home again, but retail stays open. So yeah, we had a lot of that ebb and flow of like, yeah, we're back and no, we're not. And now we're back. I had a little core group of customers that stayed working the whole time downtown.
That's great. Yeah.
And then online helped us. I have to say our landlord was great. So we did get like the rent relief and all of that, but I'm too small to have actually qualified for any of the other things because I had no employees. I had nothing else. So it wasn't easy, but we did get through. And like I said, I have very loyal customers, and all of them are like, we want to buy from you so that you stay alive. Yeah. It's funny because I still have people who it's their first time back in downtown after 5 years or whatever it is. And they're like, oh, you're still here. Yay. But it's funny to me how many people have just never come back downtown. Yeah. And so the traffic is not anywhere near what it used to be. It's very up and down. And I've heard this from restaurant friends of mine. I've heard this from lots of businesses that it's just really unpredictable. It's a roller coaster. So you never know on any given day or any given week if it's going to be a busy week or not a busy week. And so you sort of have to just learn to roll with the punches, but it makes it a little bit harder in terms of the buying and how much you should get of this or that. Or so hopefully everybody's patient with us. But yeah, it's not over for the businesses, I don't think. And I think that's just in general with small businesses, restaurants, because everything is so different now.
Right.
Yeah. It's a new reality.
A little bit of a paradigm shift. Yeah.
Yeah.
But one of the things I really enjoy about, and this is why I do this, stationery shops, the fact that you can walk in, find writing instruments, whether that's fountain pens or however you want to quantify that. There's something so amazing about walking into a store and being able to buy things and having a conversation with someone like yourself. I'm just curious your opinions on the bigger box stores and the likes of Amazon, and how that's perhaps infringing on the space of stationery shops and making it potentially difficult.
Yeah. So the one thing I will say, yes, we have an online store. We've had an online store the whole time. It's a bit of an antiquated online store, and my goal eventually is to switch it over to something a little bit more modern, a little bit easier to use. But as a one-person show, that's a big time management issue. I still feel that people want to buy pens and paper in person. I think you want to pick up the pen and feel the weight. You want to feel the paper. If there's sample, write on the notebook, you know what I mean? I feel like it's a very tactile industry. So as much as you can sell online, absolutely, I still feel like most people want to do it in person because it is just a touchy feel and extra weight thing. And it's, that idea. That being said, I think if you're rebuying things, then it's easy to order online. Right. You know what refill you want. Yeah. You already have that pen, and now there's a new color and order it online. I have some people who live, I don't know, Saskatchewan or wherever, and they know they love that certain brand of ink, so they'll buy ink online, no problem, and notebooks. Right. So you do a little bit of that, but to buy a full, or just to get into fountain pens and start with Amazon or Staples or any of those places, they're fine for what they do, but they don't answer the questions. They don't know. Fountain pens aren't difficult, but they can be finicky. They're not, not every pen is the same. They all have, I call them personalities. Not all pens and inks play well together.
And there's a certain subjective feel to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everybody holds their pen differently. Yeah. Everybody likes a certain thing out of a pen, and it's not the same. It's so personal and so subjective. Even in a ballpoint pen, buying a pen for someone, it's like buying them a piece of jewelry. It is so, what colors do they wear? Do they like heavy? Do they like thin? There's so many different factors that go into it that Amazon can't answer. And then I don't have a problem with people buying on Amazon. I think they need to do their research about who's selling it, because on Amazon, you never know what you're getting. It is a selling platform. It's not their responsibility to police that platform, but you never know if it's gray market, if it's real, if it's not. There's a lot of people that take advantage of that selling platform and sell fake items. and say, oh, it's this kind of pen and it's like a third of the price. When it's a third of the price, there's probably a reason for it. So just do your research and know who you're buying from. But then if you do get one on Amazon and then it's not a great pen, please don't judge fountain pens or write off the whole fountain pen industry because you got one bad pen on Amazon.
Yeah.
Because I think that fountain pens specifically, because they are a little bit more personal, sometimes there's just quirks and things that need to be worked out, or sometimes it needs to be flushed before it needs to be used. It, like, every pen is so different and you just never know. And I really think it's important to build a trust with a retailer or a person that has the answers. Or even if you like Goulet out of the States is a great resource for fountain pen questions. And he does all these amazing videos. I watch his videos because I think he's just so knowledgeable. And I think you need to educate yourself before you, go into that kind of a buying trip, but also just like before you judge it or write it off because you're like, oh, these are terrible, they're scratchy. Well, it could just be that pen is scratchy. It could be that nib is off. You just don't know. So when you have a trusted person, I think it's easier to go and ask a question. And honestly, if I get somebody where it's scratchy nib and it feels off, I'm like, oh, we'll just fix it. Like, so there's like, the retailers are more than happy to help and get you the right experience. But a lot of the pen manufacturers, for example, won't fix a pen that was bought on Amazon because they don't know that it's theirs.
Yeah.
So it's, I think, important to buy the, from a brick and mortar store.
Yep.
And just find your person. I'm not going to be everybody's person. There's like 2 or 3 pen shops in Calgary. There's lots of people that sell these things. There's lots of people to ask questions of. We all know what we're doing. We all love what we do.
Right.
So, go to them.
I think the other part that you've highlighted very clearly, obviously there's the aspect of being able to hold a pen, try out a pen in person, but the world of fountain pen inks, and it's just growing, and it's the same the amount of colors. There's something to be said about what you see digitally and what you see in person.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Again, to invoke subjectivity, just how much it changes and what might appeal to you. Because I've been in your store a couple times thinking I wanted a certain color and realizing that was not anything like I had envisioned from my quick search on Google or whatever that might be, right? So.
Yeah. If possible, you should always see swatches in person. Or even if you can't get to a store in person because you don't live in a town where there is a store, there are so many people who do comparison swatches online. So they may have a swatch of an ink and you've seen in person and they like, and they'll do like color charts. Like, these people have so much time, it's amazing. But just to compare and see what the color tone is like. But yeah, how they took the picture, if they used a filter, what your screen is set at, like, you know what I mean? It all changes. So there's nothing that beats, like, all of our inks are swatched on paper. I don't swatch them on, let's say, a Tomo River paper, which is the Japanese paper that makes the inks do all the weird, sheeny, crazy stuff. I would love to swatch everything on that, but I don't because it's not realistic, because it's not going to suit the person who's going to go back and then just use, like, copy paper to write their notes on and then wonder why their ink isn't sheening. So I try and use just a really neutral paper. But yeah, and then every nib will lay the ink differently. It's like, there's so many factors. So you have to kind of keep an open mind with ink as well. And sometimes, and it's happened to me too, where you buy an ink and you're like, you've seen the swatch, you're like, oh my God, it's beautiful. And then you get it and you write it in a pen and you're like, oh, it's not what I wanted it to be. Sometimes you just need to switch it to a different pen and then it is. And sometimes it's just not the ink that I love. And then that's a great ink to enable somebody else with. You use it as your sample ink and you're like, here, try this ink with that pen. Right? Ink trading is a great way to make friends.
In this community, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about fountain pens and inks, but I've noticed that Madison Page carries much more than just fountain pens and inks. Do you want to just share a little bit about the other products? And I'm going to call them knickknacks because some of them are quite humorous.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because we do deal with such a corporate and office client base, I try really hard to keep a lot of colleague gifts, I like to call them, like things that if there's a birthday for colleagues or in office. We do a lot at Christmas time with Secret Santa, because the most office parties will have some sort of like white elephant Secret Santa gift exchange. So we bring in a lot of kind of fun, sometimes very sarcastic, sometimes really neutral, lots of like boss gifts, or, we'll do a lot of like bar call, graduation, lots of summer student gifts, that sort of thing. So if you don't want to do a pen, like we carry some like water bottles, we carry like secret wallets, we do some briefcases and portfolios and notebooks, obviously, and then lots of little games and trivia things. And I love all the Japanese stuff. So lots of little Japanese stickers and envelopes and paper clips and magnets and that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, I try and keep it interesting to get a little bit of everything. You can't just sell pens.
Yeah.
It's nice to have little add-on gifts. So,
But very much analog related. It seems like there's
typically, yeah. We used to do some electronic. We used to sell some phone accessories, and radios and things like that. And I did love carrying the radios, but electronics is hard. And I'm not an expert in electronics. And like I said, I think you need to sell what you really know and believe in. And people could ask questions about the radios, and I literally couldn't answer anything except turn it on and dial. So I figured it was probably not the best to keep selling those. I carry a couple of little fun speakers, like just the little wireless Bluetooth speakers, which are great. The phone things, it's just so hard. Now, it was easy when everybody just had an iPhone and it's the same, but now there's so many different phones, and then they update them all the time, and then the cases all change. And it was too hard to keep up, and I was like, I can't do this. So, and we used to do a little bit of barware, but I found you really only sold that stuff at Christmas time or Stampede. We've sold a lot of flasks at Stampede. And I just felt like I needed to open up more space for, frankly, more Japanese pens and gel pens and that sort of thing. And that's what our bread and butter is. So I was like, why wouldn't I just really stick with that?
Yeah. In terms of the climate in Calgary, dry, cold, all of the above.
Live in a desert.
We live in a desert, a cold desert at times.
Yeah.
Almost 6 months a year. I'm just curious, how does that affect when you bring in stock, when you bring in inventory? What kind of inventory do you bring in?
Absolutely. So ink obviously is affected the most. We do stock up our inks sort of end of October, mid-November-ish. Probably be our last deliveries of when we really get inks in. Some of the Canadian distributors will overnight ink packages to us if we're really desperately low. Like if I run out of like a black ink of a basic brand, they'll FedEx overnight and they wrap it in foil and, they kind of do all the stuff. And we are lucky enough to get Chinooks here. So we can kind of sometimes gauge like, oh, next week's not going to be -40. Like we're going to be -10 or 0 because we're lucky enough that it does fluctuate like that. For those that don't live in Calgary, it really does go from -40 to +12 sometimes. And if we know that's coming, then they'll ship it out and get it overnight so that we know it won't freeze. Frozen ink, nothing happens to the actual ink. It's usually okay. It's more that the bottles will shatter if it's a glass bottle. So we have to be really particular about that. Cartridges will explode. They just have no room to expand. So we do stock up a ton of cartridges. And then they'll ship things, for example, like a Platinum Preppy. They'll just ship them in the winter without the cartridge. And then when it warms up enough, they'll send us like all the cartridges. So we just try to have as much stock as we can before true winter hits. And then I think they usually will restart selling things mid-March, which sometimes even then it's a little bit early. I don't like the line I bring in from Korea, for example. I don't order until end of March, early April, just because you never know. And when it's coming from Korea, you don't want it in transit if we get a cold snap all of a sudden. Because, and then I just find in Calgary in general can be really tough on pens. Like a lot of pens, I know lots of people think that the Pilot Metropolitan is a great pen as a starter pen, and it is. But in Calgary, I just find that it hard starts all the time. So it's always dry. So pens and inks in particular that behave really well in other environments don't necessarily here. And roller balls can be really finicky and susceptible to drying out. Or sometimes if I get a shipment and they were shipped in the winter, I'll get a whole batch of them that don't write properly and they're skippy, probably because they froze and then they don't ever really come back to life properly. So yeah, you have to be a little bit careful about that. You get some like glue disintegrates here for anyone who's ever been in the dryness that we live in. Rubber bands crack, glue will literally just evaporate or disintegrate, and so sometimes you'll have to get pens sent in to re-glue rings on and things like that. And I've asked repair centers about that if that's normal for that pen, and they're like, no, just from Alberta. Like, oh, aren't we lucky? But at the same time, then if you have like inks that are too wet in other places, they're great here. So it's in general with fountain pens everywhere, but especially here, it's just a matter of knowing if a pen runs drier or wetter and just knowing which inks. And honestly, it's a guessing game. Like, it's just a matter of playing and finding the right fit. Sometimes you just don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
There's a lot of factors in play when you're ordering your inventory. It sounds like, do you ever run out of things pretty quickly, especially around the Christmas season? And it's just kind of a waiting game for those who might be interested in picking up something that they were particularly looking for?
I'm pretty good pen and ink wise. I don't think I've ever run out of anything. I have run out of like giftware, but I can usually get it back fast enough. But pens and inks, like I do stock up pretty well. You get the odd color once in a while that you don't expect is going to be a hit. And then all of a sudden you didn't order as many bottles and it's like the one color that everybody wants. And that sort of takes you by surprise. But hopefully it's just one of the Canadian distributors and I can get it sooner rather than later and not like the Korean one or the Australian one where I have to wait for a little bit. Yeah. But I've, knock on wood, so far I've been pretty good about getting enough ink in stock.
Good.
Yeah.
What's one thing that you wish the store carried and you don't currently?
Oh, that's a very good question. I had a few different leather manufacturers and briefcase kind of player like people that I can't get anymore. And there's a couple of them that I really want back because they were the perfect product for me. And since COVID, there's some businesses that have gone under, some just don't distribute to Canada, some, there's certain things that have changed. So I would say more that than anything else. Truly my passion is ink. Anybody, as you know, because you've come in, I love the ink side of things. So I just wish I had more space for more inks. And sometimes I wish I could carry more notebooks because even though I carry quite a few, there's always something that somebody wants that I don't have, and I don't like telling them I don't have it. Yeah. I would love to say art supplies, but I don't know enough about the art side of things. I'm fascinated by it, and I love all the art things, but I don't know enough about it to stock it. Right. No space, but yeah. But I think that's about it. I'm pretty happy with our selection. Yeah.
For someone who's very stationery oriented, I'm curious what your favorite fountain pen is, for example.
That's like asking me my favorite, Chun.
Yeah.
I would say on a daily basis, I definitely flip between a Lamy Safari and a TWSBI Eco all the time. And I know some people are like, what? Because those are entry-level, inexpensive pens.
They're great pens.
But they're great and they're reliable. And I always have one inked up behind the counter because the Lamy Safari is 100% the pen I will start most people on after a preppy, let's say.
Right.
Somebody who's really seriously interested in fountain pen, I will almost always start them on a Lamy Safari just because I think it's so reliable. I think it's a workhorse pen. I like that you can switch out the nibs if they get the wrong nib size for them. They try mine and usually they go from it, but they're just fuss-free pens. And then I always think that once you're in the rabbit hole and you want to go to bottled ink, then the next logical step is a TWSBI. If you like the way the Lamy writes, the TWSBI is great. Yeah. It's very similar and the ink capacity is so wonderful. And if you do a lot of writing, you're not filling all the time. So and honestly, TWSBI will run any kind of ink. So if you're into all the shimmers and the sheens and all those weird property inks, TWSBI is the pen for you because that feed is so forgiving. You could put motor oil in that thing and it'll write. So it's such a great, easy, no fuss pen. But I have so many pens to say like my favorite. Like I have lots of high-end luxury pens as well. They're just on my everyday.
Yeah. Would you, we were talking a little bit about your fountain pen ink collection, and if I asked you if you were to guess a number, you said maybe 100, maybe more. What kind of colors do you naturally gravitate towards?
Oh gosh. Okay, so I am definitely not in the realm of the blacks, the browns, the yellows, and the reds. Those are not my colors. I am definitely like blues, turquoises, some purples. For some reason, I can't write with green. I can do teal, but if it's too green, it's no for me. I love the color green in life. I don't like it in a fountain penning for some reason. I don't know why it comes out of the pen and it gives me the creeps, and I've never been able to figure it out because I see them on the cards and I love them. And then I put them in a pen and I'm like, nope, I can't write with that. So I don't know why green. But I tend to like all the watery colors and all those kinds of colors. And then I do like burgundies and pinks, just not reds and oranges.
Okay.
Yeah. And not yellows. Lots of people do love yellowy inks.
Not for you.
Not for me. And I never write in black.
Really?
Ever.
Huh.
Like I don't write with black ballpoint. I don't like write with. The only black I will use is a fine liner or a Sharpie. Like that kind of black I can do. But in a fountain pen, never. I don't own a black ink.
I have to say it's kind of funny because you were also mentioning that your husband
Only writes. Yeah. He writes with black ink, and he owns a black ink from every single brand we carry and other brands.
Wow.
Yeah. He's the polar opposite of me. Yeah.
If there was, as we wrap up here, is there something that you would love to tell the audience about Madison Page to wrap up in terms of either checking out the store or coming to chat with you, or how they can get in touch with you and everything that's happening here?
So you can email me directly through our website on madison-page.com. And we are in 5th Avenue Place. So if you're coming downtown and you're not used to downtown Calgary and you're on Google Maps, we are on the 2nd floor because Google Maps hasn't figured out that +15 thing yet. Like I said, we're only open during the week. So unfortunately, this whole building, it's an office tower mall. So this whole building is basically closed on the weekends. There's not really any access to it. But yeah, I'm here all the time. I love answering questions. I love teaching people about fountain pens. I like feedback. I like it when people bring me things that they've tried or inks that they know. And I love discovering new inks. I love finding new inks. So anybody who has like something interesting that they would like to show, I like seeing all that stuff too. I'm as much of a pen and ink nerd as all of my customers are. But yeah, that's about it.
Have you had anyone famous pass to the store? Just out of curiosity. And I guess famous is probably a very large definition, right?
So wow.
Celebrity, maybe?
Not to my knowledge. No.
Yeah.
Local. I mean, a few local politicians, chefs, that kind of thing, but nobody that's like exciting. Right. Well, you know what I mean? That anybody outside of here would know.
Yeah. Mayor Nenshi, does he shop her?
Yes, our former mayor.
Mayor Nenshi.
And now NDP candidate for Alberta. He is a big fan of pens. It started more because I have a great relationship with his assistant, and so she orders pens as gifts all the time for us. But yes, he has quite the collection of purple pens. Sure.
Well, Shelley, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate this. And
Thank you.
if people want to find you again, let's reiterate the address.
Yeah, it's 5th Avenue Place. It's on the 2nd floor, and madison-page.com for online.